Hello and welcome to episode number 10 of the Getting Started with Booster series. If you don't know what Booster is, I recommend you to go to the first episode and start from there. Well, in this episode, we're going to be taking a look at read models and projections. So, when we were looking at the Booster structure, or rather Booster architecture, we saw that there were one thing called read models. And how do they differ from entities? So, essentially, an entity is some state of your application at some point in time. But then you have read models. Read models represent like some part of the state that you might be interested in exposing to the public. For example, in our case, we are developing a bank account application and our entity has an owner, like our account entity has an owner. But probably we should not be exposing that data because it doesn't matter. Maybe we just need to know the balance, because if we're logged in, we already have that. So that's what are read models for, to separating the data that you want to expose from the data which is the internal state of your application. And in order to transform the entities into the read models, you write projections. And this is part of the read pipeline of your application. These read models are then exposed through the GraphQL endpoint, which is provided by Booster. You can then query them, you can also subscribe to them and receive them as push notifications somehow, like they get pushed, the changes into your front end, so you don't have to be querying them constantly, and rather you just receive them through a WebSocket. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We can dive in right into creating our read models. So in the design document of our application, we said, okay, we got the bank account read model and it projects a bank account. So we can go ahead to the console and create our read model. So in order to do that, we just do boost new colon read that dash model and the name of the read model. We're going to call it account model. Going to have some fields. The fields are going to be essentially balance, which is going to be a number. And here we specify the entities that this read model projects, which is like transforms or subscribes to. It's like this very weird word, but it's like a combination between subscription and transformation. So basically it projects the account entity, and here we have to specify which field is this account identified by. So say this ID. So what does this mean? Let me explain it real quick. Now we see that we got the read models folder over here. We got the typical boilerplate created for us. And apart from the imports, the decorator, which will go back really quick, we have here the projects decorator, and it says projects account by ID. This means that, for example, if we got the account read model with ID 1, this projection function will be listening to all the accounts that have ID 1. For example, if we had another read model called, I don't know, owner read model or something like that, we could write account and we could write here owner. And what this would mean is that it would be listening to the owner field instead of the ID. So here what we're doing is listening to the ID because we want to just project the account itself, removing some fields. So when we project an account by the ID field, essentially is going to be checking that the account entity that has changed has the ID for the same value as the account read model. So coming back to the read model decorator, we have also an authorize field, like in our commands. Why? Because this is exposed in the public API. So here we could specify who is authorized to read this read model. We could go ahead and write all, but we don't really want that. We just want the clients and the bankers, which we specified before in our roles field. Now I'm gonna save, format this real quick. And here we have the projection function. This is very similar to an entity reducer, but in the way that this is listening to the changes of an entity instead of events. So each time that an entity changes and it has the same ID as the account read model, we will be executing this projection function. So we will receive here as first parameter an entity, which is the count, and a possible read model. But given that we are not doing any kind of transformation, like very big stuff, I mean, stuff related to previous values of the read model, we're just gonna return a new read model over here containing the fields that we want. So we're gonna return new account read model, and we're gonna pass an ID, which is gonna be the same ID as the entity. And we're gonna pass also the balance. Not balance. Oops. Balance. Note that we are not storing the owner here because we don't want to expose it through our public API. And this is the main usage of read models. It's to allow you to separate your private data from your public one. And here our ID is telling us, well, we're not using the current account read model, so we can just go ahead and remove it. Now we save it. So let's take a look at what we've done. Well, we first took a look at our README to see the read models that we wanted to implement. It's just an account read model. We went ahead and created it with boost new read model, account read model, dash dash fields, the fields, projects, and the entity. And then we filled the read model projection function with just returning the new account read model. So if you got any questions, just feel free to post them down below in the comment section. And of course, thanks for watching and stay tuned for our next video. We will be deploying our application and testing it.